Today we are diving deep into the world of Swedish.
Yeah, we're going to unlock the secrets of this pretty cool language, from its unique pronunciation to its surprisingly straightforward grammar.
You know, I've always heard people describe Swedish as melodic and that it has logical grammar.
Uh-huh.
But like, what does that actually mean? I mean, is it really easier to learn than, say, French with all those, verb conjugations?
Yeah, so it's definitely considered one of the more accessible languages for us English speakers. For one thing, the sentence structure is pretty similar to English.
Okay.
And while Swedish does have its own grammatical quirks, like every language does, it's known for being pretty consistent, having clear rules.
Gotcha.
Now, the melodic part, well, that's all about intonation.
Intonation.
Yeah,
So it's more than just the words, it's about how you say them.
exactly. Swedish uses something called pitch accent, where the tone goes up and down on certain syllables within a word. It's like the language has its own, kind of built-in music. Some linguists even compare it to singing.
Okay, so you're saying Swedish is basically a singing language.
Kinda, yeah.
I'm sold. But why Swedish specifically? I mean, there are a lot of languages out there.
That's true. But besides the linguistic appeal, there's a ton of cultural richness waiting to be discovered. Learning Swedish opens doors to all sorts of things.
Like what?
Well, like Nordic traditions, history, literature, even career opportunities.
Oh, yeah.
With all those international companies. Plus, think of all the incredible music and TV shows you could enjoy.
Oh, in the original Swedish.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Not just the dubbed versions.
Yeah, so it's more than just being able to order meatballs in Stockholm. It's about, connecting with a culture on a deeper level.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, I'm in. But where do we even begin?
Well, the source material we have really stresses mastering pronunciation, really. Swedish has some vowel sounds that are pretty different from English. And then, of course, you have that melodic intonation we talked about. So getting those right from the get-go is key.
So it's kind of like laying the foundation for a house.
Yeah, I like that analogy.
You got to make sure it's solid before you start building anything on top of it.
Exactly. And honestly, one of the best ways to get those sounds down is by immersing yourself in real Swedish. Listening to native speakers, paying attention to their rhythm and tone.
So it's almost like learning a musical instrument.
Yep, kind of.
Okay, that makes sense. But where can I find authentic Swedish audio? I don't exactly have Swedish friends on speed dial.
You and me both.
Yeah.
Well, podcasts are amazing for this. The source specifically recommends Svenska med Kalle for beginners.
Okay.
It's designed for learners and breaks things down in a way that's easy to follow.
All right. Podcasts, I can do that. But what about actually speaking the language? Any tips on how to go from passive listening to actually forming sentences?
For sure. Once you have a feel for the sounds, it's time to dive into grammar. The source emphasizes focusing on sentence structure and this thing called the verb second rule.
Verb second rule. Okay, that sounds a little intimidating. Is this where things start to get really complicated?
Nah, it's actually simpler than it sounds. Basically, in a main clause, the verb always comes second,
Okay.
no matter what comes first. Like in English, we might say, yesterday I went to the store, right? But in Swedish, the verb went would actually come before yesterday.
Really?
Yeah, so it would be something more like, I went yesterday to the store.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Yeah, just a different word order.
It's like they're playing a little word puzzle.
I like that, yeah.
So mastering this verb second rule is the key to speaking like a true Swede.
It's definitely one of the fundamental building blocks of Swedish grammar. But remember, don't try to learn everything at once.
Right.
Start with the basics. Greetings, numbers, everyday phrases.
Makes sense.
You'll be surprised how quickly you can start making simple sentences.
That's good to know. Okay, so we've got pronunciation and grammar covered. What's next?
Well, the source is really big on immersive learning.
Immersive learning. Okay. Break that down for me.
Think of it as like surrounding yourself with the language as much as possible. Watching TV shows, movies, listening to music.
Right.
It's all about absorbing Swedish in a way that's, natural and enjoyable.
That sounds way more fun than just drilling verb conjugations.
Right.
Are there any specific shows or movies that the source recommends?
There are a few. For authentic Swedish dialogue, Braun, which is a crime thriller,
Okay.
or Solsidan, which is a comedy series. Those are great options.
I love crime thrillers.
Oh, perfect.
But don't forget the subtitles.
Yeah, the subtitles are your friend.
Okay. Crime thrillers and Swedish meatballs.
Sounds like a good night.
Right. So immersive learning goes beyond just entertainment, right?
Right.
What about reading, like, Swedish books?
Absolutely. Even children's books. To start, Astrid Lindgren, the author of Pippi Longstocking, is a great place to begin.
Okay, I've heard of Pippi Longstocking.
Yeah,
So we've got books, we've got TV shows, we've got music. We're really building up this whole Swedish media library.
you got it.
But what about actually interacting with the language? Having conversations?
That's where things get really exciting. The source recommends checking out language exchange platforms
Okay.
like Tandem or HelloTalk. These apps connect you with native Swedish speakers
Okay.
who want to practice their English.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so it's a win-win.
It
It's an
is.
awesome way to get real speaking practice and have some cultural exchange too.
So wait, I could actually have conversations with, like, real Swedes from my couch?
Yep.
Okay, sign me up. But what if I freeze up and can't think of anything to say?
Don't worry, that's totally normal. Just start small, focus on simple greetings and introductions.
Okay.
And remember, even native speakers make mistakes. It's all part of the learning process.
Right, right.
Don't be afraid to mess up.
Good point. Okay, so podcasts for listening, TV shows for immersion, and language exchange apps for speaking. That's a pretty good toolkit. But what about expanding my vocabulary beyond just, like, the basics?
Ah, that's where some good old-fashioned vocabulary building comes in. And the source has some really good tips for that too.
Let's hear them.
One of the most effective techniques is using flashcards with something called spaced repetition. There are apps like Anki or Quizlet
Oh, yeah.
that are great for this. They use algorithms to show you words right before you're likely to forget them,
Okay.
which helps you remember them better long term.
Spaced repetition. I think I've heard of that before. Isn't that based on, like, some scientific principle about how our brains learn?
Yes, it takes advantage of the forgetting curve. By reviewing information at specific intervals, you can actually disrupt the natural forgetting process and strengthen those connections in your brain.
So it's like I'm giving my brain a little workout to help it remember those Swedish words. I like it. But what about those days when, motivation is low or life just gets in the way? How do you stay on track with your learning?
That's a challenge everyone faces. But the source has some great advice for overcoming those hurdles.
All right, let's hear it. I need all the motivation I can get.
First and foremost, remember your why. Why are you learning Swedish? What's the big goal?
Right, right.
Keeping that big picture in mind can help you push through those tough moments.
That's true. It's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day and forget why you started in the first place.
Totally.
Yeah.
And the source also recommends breaking down your learning into smaller, manageable chunks.
Oh.
Instead of aiming for fluency right away, maybe focus on just mastering one grammar rule at a time.
Okay.
Or learning 10 new words each day.
So set realistic goals and, celebrate those small wins along the way.
Exactly. Don't underestimate the power of positive reinforcement, Reward yourself when you reach a milestone.
Oh, I like that.
Maybe treat yourself to a Swedish fika break.
Fika break. Yes. But what about those times when you feel like you're hitting a wall? Like, no matter how much you study, you're just not making progress.
Plateaus are totally normal.
Okay.
The key is to not get discouraged. Sometimes you just need to switch up your routine.
Like, mix things up a bit.
Yeah. If you've been studying on your own, maybe try joining a language learning group.
Okay.
Or finding a tutor. Getting a fresh perspective can really help.
I've never thought about joining a group. It could be fun to learn with other people.
It could.
What about resources? Any other tools or platforms that the source recommends besides, the ones we've already mentioned?
There are tons. For structured lessons, apps like Duolingo, Babbel, and Rosetta Stone are pretty popular.
I've heard of those.
They offer interactive exercises and, kind of make learning feel more like a game.
Yeah, I like that. What if I'm looking for something a bit more in-depth?
Ah, yeah. Like a comprehensive grammar guide.
Yeah.
The source mentions Essential Swedish Grammar is a really good one. It covers all those grammatical nuances in detail.
Okay, good to know.
And if you're more of a visual learner, there are platforms like LingQ that use interactive flashcards and stories.
Oh, cool. So there's something out there for every type of learner.
Definitely.
Okay, wow, this is awesome. We've covered so much. I feel inspired
That's great.
and maybe a little overwhelmed, but definitely motivated to start this Swedish journey.
That's the spirit. And remember, learning a new language is a marathon, not a sprint. Take your time, enjoy the process, and celebrate every step of the way.
Great advice. Okay, I think we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our Swedish deep dive. We've explored the unique features of the language,
Yeah.
uncovered some awesome resources, and even, talked about how to stay motivated. Listener, are you feeling as energized as I am?
We've only just scratched the surface of what Swedish has to offer.
There's so much more to explore, so stay tuned for part 2 of our deep dive, where we'll delve even deeper into the world of Swedish language and culture. Don't go anywhere.
Welcome back to our Swedish deep dive. Before we move on to more learning strategies, I want to go back to something we touched on earlier, that whole idea of cultural immersion.
Right. Learning a language isn't just about the words and grammar, it's about, understanding a different way of life.
Exactly. The source we're working with really highlights how important it is to experience Swedish culture, even if you can't, just hop on a plane to Stockholm.
So what are some ways to immerse yourself in Swedish culture without actually being in Sweden?
Well, one thing you can do is look for Swedish cultural events happening near you, like film festivals
Okay.
that showcase Nordic cinema, concerts with Scandinavian artists, or even museum exhibits, things about Swedish history or design.
So it's about actively seeking out those pockets of Swedishness
Yeah,
right here in your own community.
exactly.
That's a good idea. You could probably even find meetups for people who are into the Swedish language.
For sure. Those can be great for practicing your speaking and meeting other people who, share your interest in Swedish.
Yeah, it's like building your own mini Swedish community right here at home.
Exactly.
I love it. But, let's be real for a second. The best way to experience the culture is to actually go to Sweden, right?
Totally. The source we're looking at emphasizes how travel can really accelerate your learning.
Okay.
Imagine walking through the streets of Stockholm, ordering fika in a cafe, even striking up a conversation with some locals.
Okay, now I'm getting really jealous.
It's an experience that just brings the language to life.
Yeah.
But hey, even if you can't travel to Sweden right this minute, you can still create that, Swedish bubble.
Swedish bubble. Okay, I like that. What is that?
It's all about surrounding yourself with the sights, sounds, and even the tastes of Sweden.
Okay.
Start with your media library, books, music, movies, podcasts.
Right, so we're building on those immersive techniques we talked about before.
Yes.
But how do you take it a step further? Beyond just, listening and watching?
Well, think about bringing Swedish into your daily routine in some creative ways.
Like what?
Like labeling things around your house with their Swedish names.
Oh, fun.
Try cooking some classic Swedish dishes.
Okay.
You can even change your phone settings to Swedish.
Oh, wow. Switch my phone to Swedish. That's a little scary. I might accidentally text my grandma in Swedish. Maybe start with something a little easier. But the point is to, make the language a part of your everyday life.
I like that. It's about turning normal activities into little Swedish lessons.
Yeah.
The more you surround yourself with it, the quicker it'll all start to click.
Absolutely.
Okay, this is all great, but, motivation can be tough, especially when life gets busy.
That's so true. The source actually talks about this quite a bit. It really stresses remembering your why.
Like, why are you putting in the effort to learn Swedish? What's the big reason? Is it to connect with your family history, travel the world, land your dream job?
Okay, so keep that big picture in mind.
Yeah. Picture yourself achieving that goal.
Yeah.
How awesome will it feel to watch that Swedish film without subtitles? To just chat with locals in Gothenburg.
Okay, yeah. Now I'm picturing myself confidently ordering a kanelbull in a Stockholm bakery, no problem.
Exactly. And don't forget to celebrate those little wins along the way.
Oh, yeah.
Did you finally get that grammar rule? Did you have your first conversation with a native speaker? Give yourself a pat on the back?
I like that. Those little victories help keep the momentum going.
For sure.
But what about when it feels like no matter how hard you try, you're just not getting anywhere?
Yeah.
Any advice for dealing with those times when you feel stuck?
Plateaus are totally normal. Don't let them derail you. Sometimes you just need to change things up.
Okay.
Maybe you've been relying on apps. Try adding in some real-world practice. Join a conversation group or find a language partner.
So shake things up and introduce some new stuff into your routine.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to experiment with different learning methods,
Okay.
If flashcards aren't working, maybe try a visual approach. Things like mind maps or videos with interactive transcript.
It's easy to get stuck in a rut and feel like you're not making any progress. Sometimes a new perspective can make all the difference.
That's it. And remember, learning a language is a journey, not a race. Embrace the challenges, celebrate the good stuff, and just enjoy the ride.
That's great advice. Okay, so we've covered immersive techniques, motivation, how to get unstuck. I think we've touched on pretty much everything.
Yeah, it's been great.
Listener, what's resonating with you most so far?
It's been a really interesting look at how to learn a language in a way that's both effective and enjoyable.
Totally. But before we wrap things up, there's one more thing we need to talk about.
Oh.
We've talked about all the mechanics of learning Swedish, but there's a deeper layer we need to explore.
Uh-huh.
I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
It's about understanding that learning a language isn't just about gaining a skill.
Okay.
It's about connecting with a different culture
Right.
on a much deeper level.
I like that. It's about understanding a different way of thinking, a different way of seeing the world.
Exactly. Swedish culture and history,
Oh, yeah.
they offer a window into a world that's really fascinating.
So it's not just about being able to speak. It's about understanding the soul of the culture.
Yes. It's about experiencing the beauty of diversity and expanding your horizons in ways you never thought possible.
Wow. Okay. I like that. It makes the whole language learning experience so much more meaningful.
It really does.
Yeah.
And that brings us to our final thought for you today.
Ooh, hit me with it. What's the one thing you want our listeners to walk away with?
As you start learning Swedish, remember that you're not just learning words and grammar. You're unlocking a whole new way to experience the world.
Unlocking a new way to experience the world. Okay. I love that.
It's a reminder that learning a language is a gift,
Yeah.
a chance to grow, to connect, and to better understand, humanity.
That's beautiful. That's a perfect way to end things.
I think so.
We'll leave you with that to think about. Until next time, happy learning. We were just saying how learning Swedish can open up like a whole new way of experiencing the world. But what does that actually look like, How is a Swedish perspective different from, say, an American one?
That's a really good question. And actually, the source material gives us some pretty interesting insights into that. Swedish culture really values things like sustainability,
Okay.
social equality, and a connection to nature. These values are built into their way of life and often reflected in the language itself.
Okay, so can you give me an example? How do those values show up in, everyday Swedish life?
Yeah. So there's this concept called lagom.
Lagom.
It's a tough word to translate directly, but it basically means just the right amount. Or not too much, not too little. It's all about balance, moderation, and finding contentment in, simple things.
Lagom. I like that word. It sounds very Zen.
It is. It's a whole philosophy that you see in everything, from their design aesthetic, which is all about clean lines and functionality,
Okay.
to their approach to work-life balance, which really prioritizes spending time with family and being in nature.
So learning Swedish isn't just about the language. It's gaining access to this whole different way of thinking about the world.
That's exactly it. And it's one of the coolest things about learning any new language, that ability to step outside your own culture
Yeah.
and see things from a totally fresh perspective.
I'm telling you, we've covered so much in this deep dive, from, the details of pronunciation and grammar all the way to the bigger cultural impacts of learning Swedish. I gotta say, I'm feeling pretty inspired to dust off my Duolingo app and give Swedish a real shot.
That's great to hear. And remember, learning a new language is, full of surprises and enriching experiences. Embrace the tough parts, celebrate the wins, and most of all, have fun with it.
Great advice. Who knows? Maybe someday soon our listeners will be sipping coffee in a cafe in Stockholm, chatting away in Swedish about Lagom or, the latest Scandinavian thriller they've been binge watching.
I love that image. The possibilities really are endless.
They are. So, listener, take the leap and unlock the world of Swedish. You won't regret it.
Couldn't agree more.
And with that, we'll wrap up our Swedish deep dive. We hope you've enjoyed the journey. Until next time, happy learning.